She looked me in the eyes and said she had to let me go to cut costs. But I saw something she didn't know I saw. Her credit card statement sitting right there on the marble counter. $180,000 spent in 1 month. On what? Designer bags, luxury spa treatments, private jet rentals. Meanwhile, I was scrubbing her toilets for minimum wage, barely affording my daughter's medication. She thought I'd just disappear quietly. She thought wrong. What I did next? Let's just say karma came early and I was her delivery driver. Before I tell you how I made her regret every single dollar she spent while robbing me of my livelihood, drop a comment and tell me, which country are you watching from? Are you from the US, UK, Nigeria, South Africa, or somewhere else? And if you believe hardworking people deserve justice, hit that subscribe button. This channel shares real stories from real maids who refuse to be silenced. Now let me tell you exactly what happened. The marble floors of the Ashford mansion gleamed like mirrors under the morning sun, and Kesha took Williams' pride in that. Every surface, every corner, every piece of crystal in the chandelier, she made them sparkle. For 3 years, she'd poured her heart into this house, treating it better than the cramped 2-bedroom apartment she shared with her daughter and aging mother across town. "Kesha!" Mrs. Victoria Ashford's voice echoed from the second-floor landing, sharp and impatient as always. "The guest bathroom needs attention. I'm having people over tonight." "Yes, ma'am, right away." Kesha straightened up from where she'd been scrubbing the kitchen baseboards, her knees aching for hours on the floor. She was 42, but felt 60 some days. Still, she smiled. She always smiled. This job paid $15 an hour. Barely enough, but it was steady. And steady meant her daughter's asthma medication got paid for. It meant keeping the lights on. Victoria Ashford descended the spiral staircase like she was walking a runway, her silk robe flowing behind her, diamond rings catching the light. She was maybe 35, blonde, beautiful in that expensive way that came from personal trainers and monthly Botox appointments. Everything about her screamed wealth, from her perfectly highlighted hair to her French manicured nails to the Hermes slippers on her feet that probably cost more than Kesha's monthly rent. "Oh, and Kesha?" Victoria paused, examining her own reflection in the hallway mirror. "Make sure you use the lavender polish in the dining room. Last time it smelled too much like lemon. It gave me a headache." "Of course, Mrs. Ashford. I'm sorry about that." Kesha had learned early on that apologizing was easier than explaining. Easier than saying that the lavender polish cost 3 times as much and Victoria had told her to use the cheap stuff to save money. But Kesha would buy it herself if she had to. She needed this job. The hours blurred together as they always did. Dusting, scrubbing, polishing, organizing. Kesha moved through the 8-bedroom house like a ghost, present but invisible. She knew every corner of this mansion better than the family who owned it. She knew that Mr. Ashford kept a bottle of whiskey hidden behind the law books in his study. She knew that their teenage daughter, Madison, snuck out through the laundry room window at night. She knew that Victoria spent more time shopping online than she did with her own children. But Kesha kept her observations to herself. That was rule number 1 of domestic work. See everything, say nothing. Around 2 p.m., Victoria called her into the main sitting room. The afternoon light streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows that Kesha had just cleaned yesterday, overlooking a pool that cost more than most people's houses. "Kesha, sit down, please." Victoria gestured to the white leather couch. Something felt wrong. In 3 years, Kesha had never been invited to sit on the furniture. She perched on the edge, her worn sneakers not quite touching the plush cream carpet. Victoria sighed dramatically, clasping her hands together. "This is so difficult for me. You've been wonderful, truly, but I'm afraid I have to let you go." The words hit Kesha like ice water. "Ma'am, did I do something wrong? I can fix." No, it's nothing like that." Victoria waved her hand dismissively, her Cartier bracelet jangling. "It's just that, well, with the economy and everything, we need to cut costs. My husband's business has been struggling, and we're trying to tighten our budget. I'm sure you understand." Kesha's mind raced. Cut costs? Just last week, she'd unpacked delivery boxes containing 4 new designer bags. Yesterday, she'd hung up a dress with the tags still on it. $8,000. The week before, she'd organized the garage to make room for Victoria's new Mercedes, her 3rd car. When would you need me to? Kesha couldn't finish the sentence. Her throat was too tight. Today can be your last day. I'll pay you through the end of the week, of course. I'm not a monster. Victoria smiled, like she was doing Kesha a favor. You can finish up your current tasks and then we'll settle up. Kesha nodded numbly, standing on shaking legs. Thank you for the opportunity, Mrs. Ashford. She walked back toward the kitchen in a daze. Cut costs. The words echoed in her head mockingly. How was she going to tell Imani? How was she going to pay for her medication? The insurance through this job was the only reason they could afford the specialist visits. As she reached for her cleaning supplies under the kitchen sink, something caught her eye on the marble counter island. A piece of paper, cream-colored and expensive-looking. Victoria must have been going through her mail earlier. Kesha shouldn't look. She knew she shouldn't, but her hand reached out anyway. It was a credit card statement, Chase Sapphire Reserve. And there, in bold black numbers at the top, previous balance $180,247.68. Kesha's breath stopped. She scanned the purchases, her eyes growing wider with each line. Bergdorf Goodman, $12,450. Private jet charter, $38,000. Tiffany & Co., $27,890. Four Seasons Resort Spa Package, $15,600. Louis Vuitton, $22,300. The list went on and on, page after page of luxury purchases all in 1 month. 1 single month. Kesha's hands trembled as she set the statement back down exactly where she found it. The pristine kitchen suddenly felt suffocating. The gleaming counters, the high-end appliances, the wine fridge stocked with bottles that cost more than her weekly grocery budget. It all blurred together. $180,000 in 1 month, and Victoria had just fired her to cut costs? Something inside Kesha shifted. It wasn't anger, exactly. Not yet. It was something colder, sharper. A clarity she'd never felt before. For 3 years, she'd been invisible in this house. A pair of hands that cleaned and scrubbed and polished, without a face, without a story, without needs of her own. She'd accepted the low pay, the lack of benefits, the casual dismissals, and thoughtless demands. She'd told herself to be grateful, to not make waves, to keep her head down. But as she stared at that credit card statement, something crystallized in her mind. Victoria Ashford was a liar, and Kesha Williams was done being invisible. She pulled out her phone, her fingers still trembling slightly, and snapped a photo of the statement. Then another of the second page, and the third. The click of her camera shutter sounded impossibly loud in the silent kitchen, each photo a small act of rebellion. Kesha had 4 hours left in this house, 4 hours before Victoria paid her off and sent her out the door, probably to be forgotten by tomorrow. But 4 hours was enough time to look around, really look, at all the things she'd seen but never truly noticed, all the pieces of this perfect, expensive lie. As she heard Victoria's heels clicking across the floor above her, probably heading to her walk-in closet to choose an outfit for tonight's dinner party, the one Kesha had been fired to pay for, she made a decision. If Victoria wanted to cut costs by destroying Kesha's livelihood, then Kesha would make sure the world knew exactly what those costs really were. She pulled out her phone, her fingers still trembling slightly, and snapped a photo of the statement, then another of the second page, and the third. The click of her camera shutter sounded impossibly loud in the silent kitchen. Each photo a small act of rebellion. Kesha had 4 hours left in this house, 4 hours before Victoria paid her off and sent her out the door, probably to be forgotten by tomorrow. But 4 hours was enough time to look around, really look, at all the things she'd seen but never truly noticed, all the pieces of this perfect, expensive lie. As she heard Victoria's heels clicking across the floor above her, probably heading to her walk-in closet to choose an outfit for tonight's dinner party, the one Kesha had been fired to pay for. She made a decision. If Victoria wanted to cut costs by destroying Kesha's livelihood, then Kesha would make sure the world knew exactly what those costs really were. She slipped her phone back into her pocket, picked up her cleaning supplies, and headed toward the guest bathroom. She had work to do, and for the first time in 3 years, it had nothing to do with cleaning. Kesha moved through the guest bathroom like a woman possessed, but her mind was miles away from the gleaming fixtures and marble countertops. Every stroke of the cleaning cloth was automatic, muscle memory from 3 years of repetition. Her real attention was on the house itself, seeing it now not as a workplace, but as a crime scene waiting to be documented. She'd been stupid, blind. For 3 years, she'd cleaned up after Victoria's excessive lifestyle without questioning it, without connecting the dots. But now she saw everything with new eyes. The guest bathroom alone was a testament to waste. Half-empty bottles of $200 face cream lined the shelves, used once and abandoned. Designer towels, the kind Kesha had been yelled at for washing in hot water, were casually tossed in the hamper after a single use. A silk bathrobe with the tag still attached hung on the door. Price tag, $1,400. Kesha photographed it all. By 3 o'clock, she'd made her way to Victoria's home office, a room she was normally forbidden to enter, but today Victoria was out by the pool on a phone call, her laughter carrying through the open windows. Kesha's heart pounded as she pushed the door open. The office was pristine, all white furniture and gold accents. Victoria's laptop sat closed on the desk, but scattered around it were papers, folders, receipts. Kesha's hands moved quickly, carefully, photographing anything that looked important. A letter from the IRS requesting documentation for claimed business expenses. A rejected application for a small business loan. Victoria had claimed she was starting a charitable foundation for underprivileged women. Receipts for purchases marked as business expenses that Kesha recognized as personal items she'd unpacked herself. Then she found the trash can. People always forgot about their trash. Kesha had learned that early in her career. Rich people especially, they threw things away without thinking, assuming no one would ever look, that their garbage was beneath notice. She knelt beside the wicker wastebasket, pulling out crumpled papers one by one. The first was a bank statement for a business account. Ashford Foundation for Women's Empowerment. Balance, $250,000. But Kesha had never seen Victoria do any charity work. She'd never seen her donate anything, except old clothes that she wrote off on her taxes. The second was even more interesting. A letter from a government agency about a grant application. Victoria was applying for a small business relief grant, claiming financial hardship, claiming she needed help to keep her foundation running and to retain her essential workers. Essential workers. Kesha almost laughed. Victoria had just fired her essential worker to cut costs. She photographed everything, her hands steadier now. This wasn't just about a hypocritical rich woman anymore. This was fraud. A knock at the door made Kesha's heart stop. "Kesha, you in there?" It was Marcus, the pool maintenance guy. He only came twice a week, and Kesha had always liked him. He was one of the few people who treated her like a human being. She quickly shoved the papers back in the trash and opened the door. "Marcus, hi." He stood in the hallway, his maintenance uniform spotted with chlorine. His dark eyes were concerned. "You okay? I heard Victoria let you go." News traveled fast among the staff. "Yeah, budget cuts, apparently." Marcus snorted. "Budget cuts? Right. She just dropped $50,000 on a new pool renovation she doesn't even need. I'm supposed to start next week." He shook his head. "I'm real sorry, Kesha. You deserved better than this." Something in his tone made Kesha pause. "Marcus, has she done this before? Let people go claiming she can't afford them?" He glanced down the hallway, then stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Last year, there was a gardener, Miguel. Worked here for 5 years. She fired him right before Christmas. Same excuse. 2 weeks later, I watched them install a $30,000 outdoor kitchen." He hesitated. "And there was a nanny before that, Svetlana. Same thing. Victoria claimed they couldn't afford her anymore, then took a 3-week vacation to Bali. Kesha's jaw tightened. Did they ever try to fight it? File complaints? Miguel tried. But they're powerful, you know? Good lawyers, made it go away. Marcus looked at her carefully. Why are you asking? Kesha made a decision. She pulled out her phone and showed him the photo of the credit card statement. Because I'm not going away quietly. Marcus's eyes widened as he scrolled through the images. Holy, Kesha, this is fraud. I know. She took the phone back. She's applying for government grants claiming poverty while spending nearly $200,000 a month on personal luxuries. She's writing off personal expenses as business costs. And she's firing loyal workers to make it look like she's struggling financially. What are you going to do? I don't know yet, but I have 4 hours to figure it out. She paused. Marcus, if you hear from any of the other people she's fired, could you get me their contact information? I think they deserve to know what's really going on. He nodded slowly. I'll make some calls. And Kesha, he pulled out his own phone. I've got photos too, of all the renovations, the new cars, the deliveries. I never thought to do anything with them, but he sent them to her number. Maybe together it paints a clearer picture. After Marcus left, Kesha continued her methodical tour of the house. In Mr. Ashford's study, she found more interesting documents. Tax returns showing the couple had declared over $2 million in income last year, while simultaneously claiming their business was failing. In Madison's room, she found receipts for a $15,000 Sweet 16 party that had been charged to the foundation account as a fundraising event. Every room revealed another layer of deception, and Kesha documented it all. By 5 p.m., her phone's storage was nearly full. She had hundreds of photos, credit card statements, bank records, receipts, tax documents, grant applications, luxury purchases, a complete portrait of hypocrisy and fraud. She was in the laundry room folding the last load of designer clothes when she heard Victoria's voice getting closer. And I feel so much better about our finances now. Getting rid of the maid will save us at least $30,000 a year. We can put that toward the house in the Hamptons we've been looking at. $30,000 a year. That's all Kesha's labor was worth to her. A line item to be eliminated so Victoria could buy a vacation home. Victoria appeared in the doorway, phone still pressed to her ear. She looked at Kesha with vague surprise, as if she had already forgotten about her. Oh, you're still here? Well, finish up quickly, won't you? I need to get ready for dinner. She walked away without waiting for a response. Kesha carefully folded the last $300 designer t-shirt and placed it in the basket. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. She felt calm, purposeful. She had everything she needed. Almost. There was one more place she needed to check before she left. One more room that might hold the final piece of evidence she needed to make sure Victoria Ashford faced real consequences. The master bedroom safe. Kesha had cleaned around it for 3 years, and she knew something that Victoria didn't know she knew. She knew the combination. She'd watched Victoria open it dozens of times, always when she thought no one was looking. Kesha glanced at the clock. 5:30 p.m. Victoria would be in her bath for at least another hour, getting ready for her dinner party. It was time to see what secrets Victoria kept locked away. The master bedroom was Victoria's sanctuary. A sprawling suite decorated in cream and gold with a California king bed that cost more than Kesha Mainin's 6 months. Kesha had vacuumed this carpet 1,000 times, dusted the ornate furniture, changed the silk sheets weekly. But she'd never touched the safe. It sat in Victoria's walk-in closet, built into the wall behind a rack of evening gowns that still had designer tags attached. Kesha pushed the dresses aside, her heart hammering so hard she could hear it in her ears. This was different from photographing papers left out in the open. This was breaking and entering. This could mean real trouble. But then she thought about Imani, about how she'd have to tell her daughter that they might lose their apartment, that her medicine might have to wait. She thought about Miguel the gardener, Svetlana the nanny, all the other people Victoria had discarded like used tissues. Kesha's fingers moved across the keypad. 0728. Madison's birthday. Rich people always used their children's birthdays, even when they barely spend time with those children. The safe clicked open. Inside was exactly what Kesha expected, and worse. Stacks of cash, at least $50,000 in hundreds. Jewelry boxes containing pieces Kesha had never seen Victoria wear. Property deeds, investment documents, and a ledger. Kesha pulled out the leather-bound book with trembling hands. It was handwritten, meticulous, page after page of transactions, 2 columns, one labeled Reported and one labeled Actual. Victoria was keeping 2 sets of books. The foundation, the charitable Ashford Foundation for Women's Empowerment, was a complete sham. The ledger showed donations coming in from wealthy friends and corporate sponsors, thousands of dollars that were supposed to help women start businesses. But the actual column showed where the money really went: personal expenses, luxury purchases, family vacations, all disguised as program costs and administrative expenses. Kesha's fingers moved across the keypad. She photographed every page, her hands working quickly now. This was it. This was the evidence that would destroy Victoria's perfect facade. She was on page 20 when she heard footsteps. "Mother, have you seen my—" Madison's voice stopped abruptly. Kesha looked up to find Victoria's 17-year-old daughter standing in the closet doorway, her eyes wide. For a long moment, neither of them moved. "What are you doing?" Madison's voice was quiet, shocked. Kesha made a split-second decision. She had always liked Madison, despite everything. The girl was spoiled and entitled, but there were moments when she saw something else, a flash of awareness, maybe even guilt about her privilege. "Your mother fired me today," Kesha said calmly, still holding the ledger. "She said it was to cut costs, but I found her credit card statement. $180,000 in 1 month, Madison. And now this." She held up the book. "She's been stealing from a charity, money that was supposed to help women like me." Madison's face went pale. I don't... "Did you know," Kesha asked, "about the foundation being fake?" "No." Madison stepped into the closet, her voice rising. "I thought it was real. She's always talking about it at parties, telling everyone how much she cares about empowering women, how she's making a difference." She stopped, her hand going to her mouth. "Oh my God, it's all a lie?" "Everything's a lie," Kesha said quietly. She closed the ledger and started to put it back. "Wait." Madison pulled out her own phone. "Let me help you photograph it. My phone has a better camera." For the next 10 minutes, the fired maid and the wealthy daughter worked in silence, documenting every page of evidence. When they finished, Madison looked at Kesha with something that might have been respect. "She's awful, isn't she?" Madison said softly. "My mother. I've always known she was shallow and materialistic, but I didn't know she was a criminal." "What will you do?" Kesha asked carefully, "when this comes out?" Madison was quiet for a moment. "Probably be relieved. I'm leaving for college in 3 months anyway. Maybe it'll be easier to build my own life when I'm not living in her shadow." She looked at Kesha directly. "Thank you for showing me who she really is." "Madison!" Victoria's voice echoed from downstairs. "Where are you? Our guests will be here in 30 minutes. "Coming!" Madison called back. She turned to Kesha. "You should go. I'll tell her I was looking for a bracelet and couldn't find it. She'll be too distracted getting ready to notice anything else." Kesha nodded, closing the safe and rearranging the dresses to hide it. As she moved toward the door, Madison touched her arm. "Kesha, whatever you're planning to do with those photos, I hope it works. She deserves it." Downstairs, the house was transforming for the evening's entertainment. Caterers moved through the kitchen, preparing food that cost more than Kesha's monthly grocery budget. A bartender set up a station in the dining room. Flowers, massive, expensive arrangements, were being positioned throughout the first floor. All of it charged to the foundation, no doubt. All of it written off as program expenses. Victoria swept through the kitchen in a designer cocktail dress, barking orders at the catering staff. When she saw Kesha, she paused. "Oh, you're still here? Well, I suppose you can help with the final setup before you go." She gestured vaguely at the dining room. Make sure everything looks perfect. Of course, Mrs. Ashford. Kesha's voice was steady, calm. She felt oddly peaceful now that the decision was made. She spent the next hour making Victoria's house perfect one last time. She arranged the flowers, set out the crystal glasses, made sure every surface gleamed. She did it all perfectly, professionally, because this was her work, and she took pride in it, regardless of who she did it for. At 7 o'clock, as the first guests began to arrive, Victoria appeared with an envelope. "Your final payment," she said, handing it over. "I've included a small bonus for your years of service. I do appreciate everything you've done, Kesha. You've been adequate." Adequate. 3 years of backbreaking work, of sacrifice, of loyalty. Adequate? Kesha tipped the envelope. "Thank you, Mrs. Ashford." "Good luck finding something else," Victoria said, already turning away to greet her guests. "I'm sure you'll land on your feet eventually." Kesha walked out the front door of the Ashford mansion for the last time. Behind her, she could hear laughter and champagne glasses clinking, the sounds of wealth and privilege celebrating itself. She sat in her 15-year-old Honda Civic in the circular driveway and opened the envelope. Inside was a check for $850, 2 weeks' pay, and a $250 bonus. $250 for 3 years of her life. Kesha pulled out her phone and scrolled through the hundreds of photos she had taken. Then she opened her contacts and found the number Marcus had sent her earlier, a reporter from the local news station who'd covered financial fraud cases before. Her finger hovered over the call button. This was the point of no return. Once she made this call, everything would change. Victoria would know. There would be investigations, maybe lawsuits. It could get ugly. But behind her, through the mansion's windows, she could see Victoria laughing with her guests, totally oblivious, totally confident that she'd gotten away with it all. Kesha pressed the call button. "Hello? Channel 7 News. My name is Kesha Williams, and I have a story about charity fraud you're going to want to hear." The reporter's name was Jennifer Chen, and she met Kesha at a coffee shop 2 miles from the Ashford mansion the very next morning. Jennifer was in her early 30s, sharp-eyed and professional, with a notebook already open before Kesha even sat down. "Tell me everything," Jennifer said, sliding a coffee across the table. "Start from the beginning." Kesha did. She told her about the firing, the credit card statement, the ledger, the fake foundation. As she talked, she transferred the photos from her phone to Jennifer's laptop. Hundreds of images that told a story of systematic fraud and exploitation. Jennifer's eyes grew wider with each photo. Kesha, this is massive. The Ashford Foundation has been featured in society pages. They've received corporate sponsorships. They even got a commendation from the mayor last year." She scrolled through the ledger photos. If these books are accurate, we're talking about at least $500,000 in fraud, maybe more. "Can you do a story on it?" Kesha asked. "Can I?" Jennifer laughed. "Kesha, this isn't just a story. This is a criminal investigation waiting to happen." She pulled out her phone. "I need to make some calls. IRS, State Attorney General's office, maybe the FBI. Financial fraud on this scale, Victoria Ashford is going to prison." The words sent a chill through Kesha. Prison. She'd wanted justice, wanted Victoria to face consequences, but hearing it stated so baldly made it real. "Will I get in trouble?" Kesha asked quietly. "For taking the photos? For opening the safe?" Jennifer looked at her seriously. "Possibly, but here's the thing. You're a whistleblower exposing a crime. Most prosecutors won't come after someone who's revealing fraud, especially when you're the victim. And Kesha, you are a victim. She stole from donors under false pretenses and fired you as part of covering up her financial situation." She reached across the table. "I can't make promises, but I'll make sure everyone knows you're the hero here, not the criminal." Over the next 3 days, everything moved faster than Kesha could have imagined. Jennifer's story broke on Thursday evening news. Local socialites charity accused of massive fraud. The segment featured Kesha's interview. Her face shone, her voice steady as she explained how she'd discovered the truth. The station had verified the documents with forensic accountants, had reached out to donors who confirmed they'd given money to the foundation, believing it would help women in need. By Friday morning, Kesha's phone was exploding. The first call was from Marcus. "Kesha, I just saw the news. You're everywhere." The second was from a lawyer named Patricia Moss, who specialized in employment law and whistleblower cases. "Ms. Williams, I'd like to represent you pro bono. What Victoria Ashford did to you and others is unconscionable. Let me help you fight back." The third call was from Miguel, the gardener Victoria had fired. "Is it true, what they're saying on the news about Mrs. Ashford? Because if you're taking her down, I want to help." By Friday afternoon, Patricia had filed a wrongful termination lawsuit on Kesha's behalf. By evening, 3 other former employees had joined the suit: Miguel, Svetlana, the nanny, and a housekeeper named Rosa who'd been fired 2 years ago. The story went viral. Social media exploded with outrage. Victoria's Instagram, once filled with glamorous photos of charity events and inspirational quotes about empowering women, was flooded with angry comments. Someone created a hashtag #AshfordFraud. Another, #Justice for Kesha. People who donated to the foundation came forward, furious. A tech company that had sponsored the foundation demanded their $100,000 donation back. The mayor's office released a statement saying they were deeply concerned and launching an investigation. On Saturday, the IRS showed up at the Ashford mansion with a warrant. Kesha watched the news coverage from her apartment. Imani curled up beside her on the couch. Federal agents carried boxes of documents out of the house. Victoria stood in the doorway in yoga pants and a designer sweatshirt, her perfect hair pulled back, her face pale and shocked. No makeup, no jewelry. For the first time, she looked ordinary. "Mom, is that the lady who fired you?" Imani asked. "Yes, baby." "She looks scared." "She should be," Kesha said quietly. The doorbell rang. Kesha's heart jumped. Were they coming for her now? Had Victoria somehow turned this around? But when she opened the door, she found Jennifer Chen with a camera crew. "Kesha, I'm sorry to show up unannounced, but the story's getting national attention. CNN wants to interview you. So does Good Morning America. Everyone wants to hear from the maid who took down a millionaire." Jennifer's eyes were kind. "You don't have to do any of it, but I think your voice matters here. I think other domestic workers need to hear that they don't have to accept being treated as disposable." Kesha thought about it. 3 days ago, she'd been invisible, voiceless, powerless. Now she had a platform. "Okay," she said, "let's tell the story." By Sunday, Kesha had given interviews to 4 major news outlets. Each time she told the same truth. She wasn't angry. She wasn't vengeful. She simply believed that people who broke the law should face consequences regardless of their wealth. She talked about the other workers Victoria had discarded, about the donors who trusted their money would help people, about the real women in need who never got the help the foundation promised. She became, almost overnight, the face of a movement. #Domestic Workers Deserve Better started trending. Labor rights organizations reached out. Politicians promised to investigate fraud in charitable foundations more aggressively. And through it all, Victoria Ashford remained silent. Her lawyer released a brief statement denying all allegations, but Victoria herself disappeared from public view. The mansion's gates stayed closed. The dinner party stopped. The Instagram account went dark. On Monday morning, exactly 1 week after Kesha had been fired, she received a call from Patricia Moss. "Kesha, you need to sit down for this," her lawyer said. The state attorney general just announced formal charges against Victoria Ashford: wire fraud, tax evasion, theft by deception, and about 15 other counts. If convicted on all charges, she's looking at 20 to 30 years in federal prison. Kesha sat down heavily on her couch. 20 to 30 years. "And there's more," Patricia continued, her voice brightening. "The foundation's assets have been frozen and will be liquidated. Under whistleblower laws, you're entitled to a percentage of the recovered funds. Based on preliminary numbers, Kesha, you're looking at a settlement of at least $150,000, maybe more." The number didn't seem real. 6 months ago, Kesha had been struggling to afford a $20 copay for Imani's inhaler. Now she was looking at more money than she'd earned in 5 years of back-breaking work. "What happens now?" Kesha asked. "Now?" Patricia laughed. "Now Victoria Ashford's perfect life falls completely apart, and yours starts getting better." 3 months later, Kesha stood outside the federal courthouse in a navy blue dress Patricia had helped her pick out. The morning was crisp and clear, the kind of autumn day that felt like new beginnings. Cameras lined the steps, reporters jostling for position. But this time, Kesha wasn't nervous. She'd learned something over the past months. The truth was powerful, and she'd been carrying it all along. Victoria Ashford arrived in a black sedan, flanked by her legal team. She wore a conservative gray suit, her hair pulled back in a simple bun, her jewelry minimal. The transformation was stark. Gone was the glamorous socialite it once floated through her mansion in silk and diamonds. This Victoria looked smaller, diminished, almost unrecognizable. Their eyes met for just a moment on the courthouse steps. Victoria looked away first. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Kesha sat in the front row next to Patricia, with Miguel, Svetlana, and Rosa behind her. Marcus had taken the day off work to be there. Even Madison had come, sitting quietly in the back, separate from her father. The charges were read: 18 counts of fraud, tax evasion, theft, and money laundering. The evidence was overwhelming. The ledger Kesha had photographed, bank records seized by federal agents, testimony from donors and former employees. Victoria's lawyers had tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecution had refused. They wanted to make an example of her. When it came time for victim impact statements, Patricia nodded at Kesha. "You ready?" Kesha stood and walked to the witness stand. She looked directly at Victoria as she spoke. 3 years ago, I took a job as your housekeeper. I worked hard every single day. I cleaned your home like it was a palace, treated your family with respect, stayed late when you needed me, came early when you called. I never asked for much, just fair pay and basic dignity. You fired me claiming you needed to cut costs. But it was never about costs, was it, Mrs. Ashford? It was about covering up your crimes. I was fired because maintaining the illusion of financial struggle required sacrifices, and people like me, domestic workers, immigrants, single mothers, we're the ones who always get sacrificed first. Victoria's head was down, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. But here's what you didn't understand. We're not invisible. We see everything. We know everything. And when you push us too far, we fight back. You stole from people who trusted you. You exploited workers who depended on you. You lied to donors who wanted to help others. And for what? Designer bags? Luxury vacations? A lifestyle you were already wealthy enough to afford. Kesha paused, letting the words settle. I don't hate you, Mrs. Ashford, but I hope you spend your time in prison thinking about all the people you hurt, all the lives you could have actually changed with that money if you'd been honest. And I hope other people who think they're above the law are watching this and learning. Justice might be slow, but it's coming. She stepped down. The courtroom was silent. The judge's ruling came swiftly. Guilty on all counts. 25 years in federal prison with possibility of parole after 15. Full restitution to all victims and donors. Seizure of assets, including the mansion, the cars, the jewelry. Everything would be sold to pay back what she'd stolen. As the bailiffs led Victoria away in handcuffs, she looked back one last time. Not at her husband, not at her daughter. At Kesha. Their eyes met again. And this time, Kesha saw something she'd never seen before in Victoria's face. Understanding. The recognition that actions have consequences. That every person matters, regardless of their station in life. Then Victoria was gone. Outside the courthouse, Kesha gave her final interview to Jennifer Chen. How do you feel? Jennifer asked. Kesha thought about it carefully. I feel free. For 3 years, I carried the weight of that job, of being treated as less than human, of accepting scraps and being grateful for them. Now I don't have to carry that anymore. None of us do. What's next for you? Kesha smiled. I'm starting a business. A cleaning company. But different. Every worker will be paid $25 an hour minimum, with health insurance, paid time off, and respect. We're calling it Dignity Cleaning Services, because that's what was always missing. Dignity. And the settlement money? Some of it's going into the business, some is going to Imani's college fund. She wants to be a lawyer now after watching all of this. Kesha laughed. The rest? I'm using it to start a real foundation, one that actually helps domestic workers. Legal aid, emergency funds, job training, everything Victoria's foundation pretended to be. The interview went viral within hours. By the next day, Dignity Cleaning Services had received 50 applications from workers tired of exploitation. By the end of the week, Kesha had contracts with 15 clients who specifically wanted to support her mission. Miguel became her first hire, Rosa the second. Spitlana started a separate division focused on childcare with the same ethical standards. 2 months after Victoria's sentencing, Kesha hired her 20th employee, a young woman named Destiny, who'd been fired from a wealthy family's home for asking about overtime pay. Are you sure about this? Destiny asked, nervously, on her first day. The pay, the insurance, the respect, it all seems too good to be true. It's not too good, Kesha said firmly. It's exactly what should be true. It's what every worker deserves. 6 months after the trial, Kesha received a letter. The return address was a federal correctional facility. Inside was a single page, handwritten. Dear Miss Williams, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to even read this, but I needed to write it anyway. You were right about everything. I was so obsessed with maintaining an image, with proving I was successful and important, that I lost sight of basic humanity. I used people. I lied. I stole. And I told myself I deserved it because of who I was. But you showed me who I really was, a thief and a fraud. And you know what the worst part is? You were a better person on your worst day than I was on my best. I can't undo what I did, but I want you to know that I think about you every day in here, about how you had every reason to stay quiet, to accept the injustice, and you chose to fight instead. You're the kind of woman I pretended my foundation was helping, except you didn't need help. You just needed someone to stop standing in your way. I hope your business succeeds. I hope you help hundreds of workers find dignity in their work. And I hope someday, when I'm released, I can find a way to make even a small dent in the debt I owe to people like you. Respectfully, Victoria, Ashford. Kesha read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. Maybe it was genuine. Maybe it was just words from someone who lost everything. It didn't really matter. What mattered was that Kesha had won, not just in court, but in life. She'd taken the worst moment of her life, being fired unjustly, being discarded like trash, and transformed it into something powerful. She'd found her voice. She'd stood up not just for herself, but for every worker who'd ever been exploited, dismissed, or made to feel invisible. That evening, Kesha picked up Imani from school in a new car. Nothing fancy, just reliable and safe. They stopped for ice cream, a small luxury that no longer felt like a financial crisis. Mom, my teacher asked me to talk to the class about what happened, about you and the trial and everything. Can I? What would you say? Kesha asked. Imani thought about it. That my mom taught me you should always stand up for what's right, even when it's scary. That people who do wrong things should face consequences. And that just because someone has money doesn't mean they're better than you. Kesha pulled her daughter close. Yeah, baby. You can tell them that. So that's my story. That's how I went from being fired for budget cuts to taking down a millionaire and building a business that actually respects workers. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been treated like you don't matter, if you've ever been exploited by someone who thought they were untouchable, I want you to know your voice matters. Your story matters. And sometimes justice really does win. Hit that like button if you believe hardworking people deserve dignity and respect. Subscribe to this channel because we share real stories from real maids who refuse to be silenced. We're building a community of domestic workers who support each other and share the truth about what really happens behind those doors of rich homes. And here's the most important part. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you or someone you know ever experienced something similar? Were you fired unfairly? Treated like you were disposable? Share your story. You're not alone, and your experience deserves to be heard. Also, tell us which country you're watching from. We have viewers from all over the world. The US, UK, Nigeria, South Africa, Jamaica, the Philippines, and so many other places. Comment your country and let's see how far this community reaches. Remember, you are not invisible. You are not disposable. You are worthy of respect, fair pay, and dignity. And if someone treats you like you're not, well, just remember what happened to Victoria Ashford. Justice might take time, but it's worth the wait. I'm Kesha, and this is Dignity Stories. See you in the next video where we'll share another story of a maid who fought back and won. Until then, stay strong, stand up for yourself, and never let anyone make you feel less than you are.